Have you had someone jump in your car and yell drive? What did you do? Me and my wife booked a taxi to get us to the train station after a date. That station had the first of 2 trains, and if we missed it, we'd have a ton of trouble. So as soon as the taxi showed up we jumped in and went dude. Train leaves in 10. Drive. The guy drove like there was no tomorrow, got us there in time, and got a €20 tip. No time for change, and he fully deserved it. While waiting to pick someone up, some random guy engrossed on his phone got into my backseat and said alright, let's go. He thought I was his Uber. I turned around and started to explain to him that I wasn't an Uber. Then I realized we knew each other. We laughed like mad over the ridiculous coincidence of it all before his actual Uber came, and he hurried off. My great grandfather used to drive taxis for a living, and one day had a man put a gun to his head and tell him to drive. My great grandfather figured the guy was gonna kill him eventually once they reached a certain destination or met with someone else, so once he got to a road facing the Hudson River he drove like crazy, like 100% pedal to the metal. The guy starts freaking out and saying stuff like, what the hell are you doing? Are you crazy? My great grandfather just says, well, if you're gonna kill me then you're dying with me, and then proceeds to slam on the brakes and the guy ends up flying through the windshield. It was my sister, but she had been going through a messy divorce and had been with her then husband to go to a cash point to get some money out for something, and along the way they had been arguing. She got out of the car to get the cash, turned around and got back in the car, still absolutely fuming from the argument. She didn't even look at him, just buckled up, sat there for a moment, then snap, go on then, drive. The lady in the driver's seat of the car, which was not her husband's, replied, okay, where? Actually almost 11 years ago, I was the one who jumped into a random car and yelled drive. There was a big student party and some people decided to rob me. I just got a new BlackBerry phone, so I was determined that I will not let it go and decided to run. However, I was heavily drunk and the guys caught up to me very quickly and started to kick me in the head. I managed to escape several times, or maybe they let me go and eventually got me again. I didn't know what to do, but I saw a random car on the street waiting at traffic lights, so I just jumped into it and yelled drive. There was a couple in the car and the girls started crying immediately while the guy was asking me drive where. I told them to go to police station, but they didn't want to, so I told them to drive me home. I was so confused, assumed from beating, that I couldn't explain where is my home. I could just tell them the name of my town, which was 15 kilometers away. They dropped me off in the middle of the town, and by some miracle someone recognized me and drove me to my house. I went straight to bed and woke up in the morning in a bloody bed. Went to hospital. I had fractured jaw on 8 places, etc. Spent few weeks in a hospital. I never found out who was the driver. I wish I could. A friend and I were roofied at a club in New York City. Friend got it worse than I did, so she wasn't able to stand, and I carried her out of the club with help from a bouncer. The guy who roofied us followed us out of the club trying to help carry her out, all the while telling the bouncer that he was our friend. Our ride was just up the street, and he would take it from here. We did not know him. We managed to make it into a cab, and this guy even tried asking the cabbie where we were going. I was very adamant to both the bouncer and the cabbie that we did not know this man. As soon as we had the cab doors shut, I told the cabbie to lock the doors and just drive. I didn't even have time to look up the address of our hotel yet, but I just knew we had to nope out of that situation and away from that man and his friends as soon as possible. Convinced that if I had drank more of my drink, I would have been in the same state as my friend and we probably both would have been human trafficked. Not exactly a jump in and drive, but yeah, it happened once. Got an early morning trip picking a guy up from a busy part of the city at like 7 AM. He tells me to go sit in a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot facing the main road. I'm getting paid wait time, so I don't care at first, but after a good 15 minutes, I had to ask his story. He broke up with his ex-girlfriend some months prior so that he could get his stuff together. They broke up for both of their sakes, but it definitely sounded like her idea. Anyway, he tells me he's getting on a plane to another state to start a new job, new life kind of thing. Tomorrow, he knows his ex-girlfriend's route to work, and we were watching her neighborhood exit We were going to chase her down for a final goodbye. So, another 10 minutes pass, and we finally see the vehicle he had described for me pull up to the light to turn right. We get to the light across from it, and are waiting to turn left. Naturally, when the light changes, she goes first, and we end up having to literally chase her down through morning rush hour traffic on a busy 2-lane road for about 2 miles and 4 intersections. Before we get next to her, he flags her down, and we all pull off into a restaurant parking lot. Much to my delight, she was actually glad to see him. They exchanged a lot of hugs and kisses, held each other, and spoke in intimate, soft tones for a good 20 minutes. Yeah, the meter was still running. It was really sweet, if a little boring to sit through. I got him back home afterwards. He was really grateful, and paid me what I was owed. No tip, but it was a decent fare of about $50. Not quite drive, but more of an emotional breakdown got him to drive faster. I was running late to my plane. Because I was in a new city, my phone was running flat, so I borrowed his car charger to call the airport. It was the last plane of the day and his estimated time of arrival would have arrived as the plane was due to leave. I asked if they could hold it 10 minutes to save me spending the night in the airport, and they said no. I started bawling my eyes out because I was broke and facing the prospect of spending $300 and a night in an airport all alone. Without saying anything, he took the very expensive toll roads and got me there with 5 minutes to spare. I ran like hell and made it with literally seconds to spare. I think the Uber cost $50, but the toll roads were like $10. I have been the person to jump in a car and yell at, followed by the address. My debit card expired on the day I was going to embark on a £180+ train journey. The loss would have been crippling to me at the time, and I also could only do this journey once, and I couldn't get the tickets as a result. So I had to go back to my house to retrieve documents to prove I was allowed aboard. I tipped him very well for his speed and understanding, by which I mean I threw a 20 and a 10 at his passenger seat, shouted thank you very much, and ran out the door because I had only a few minutes to get aboard the train on the ride back. Went so fast I skidded into the station. I always get my tickets in advance now. I was on my commute and had just pulled out of the garage under my apartment. I went around one corner too slowly for the automatic door locking mechanism to work and stopped at a stop sign, and a man just opened the door and got in. I screamed at him, "What the hell are you doing?" was surprised, and he started apologizing and got out. I think he thought I was his friend giving him a lift. Terrified me. Always lock the doors manually now. Sorry, no drive part though. When I was 17 I was picking my little sister and her friend up from school at around 8:30 to 9 p.m. My sister in shotgun and her friend in the back. We got to the stoplight at the end of the parking lot of the school, and this older black lady around 50 to 60 got in the back seat. Me, being completely shocked that someone even attempted this, had no idea what to do. I drove her about 2 minutes away to one of those drive-through cigarette stores and told her to get out. She asked if I could take her home, but since I finally came to my senses, that definitely wasn't happening. I always wonder what my sister's friend was thinking in that moment. I'm a taxi driver, and once the dispatch center sends me to a hotel to pick up a client, I gave the estimated time of arrival, but the reception said to come faster. I arrived there ASAP and the client already was waiting outside. We put his stuff in the trunk and said that the ferry was departing in 10 minutes. The road was a rural one, so no traffic lights. I was going as fast as possible, but without crossing any limits. I then immediately drove into the port area, not where the taxis should be, with seconds to spare before the ferry was about to leave. I drove him a couple of meters away from the ferry's ramp. He gave a €2 tip. That was a high risk low reward I'm not willing to take again. I drive taxis and was standing outside a nice hotel in Edmonton, Alberta about 10 years ago with 2 customers. It was around 10 p.m. and we were trying to find a nice place to eat dinner. Suddenly a well-dressed older gentleman with very silver hair jumped in front of us and stopped a taxi that was driving by. He yelled, "Police, I'm commandeering this taxi." Then he motioned for us to get in. For some reason, probably because of our level of inebriation, we obliged. Once we got in, he said, "Take these gentlemen to Sorrentinos immediately and ask for insert person's name here," and off we went. No questions asked. None of us knew who he was or ever saw him again. but we went to Sorrentinos every time we were in Edmonton from that point forward. One time driving through San Francisco around dusk, my friends and I were driving through a quiet street. As we're at a stoplight, we look to the left and see this guy wrestling with this woman's purse while she sprays him with pepper spray. Another guy comes sprinting in and tackles the guy trying to steal the lady's purse. The woman, in a panic, runs towards our car and hops on my friend's lap in the driver's seat and screams drive. One of my friends calls 911 while we drive to a gas station. Eventually the cops show up and ask us a few questions to help identify the guy. Turns out that guy that tackled the thief kept him in a headlock until the police arrived. We are eventually excused and we start our 2-hour drive home. It was such a weird experience. I hope that lady is doing okay, wherever she is now. This happened to my brother at a Panda Express when he was in high school. My memory of the events is a little fuzzy, but some guy got into his car and told him to drive. He did and dropped him off. My brother got home, and when he told us, asked if we thought he should call the police. My mom was like, "Duh, call the police." I don't remember what the guy did, but when my brother called the police they did tell him, "Thanks for calling, we did have a description of your car as the one the guy got into." Fun fact, my brother is a police officer now for that same department. I drove a taxi for a few months in a town next to the sea. It was a quiet afternoon. I'd only had 2 fares in 90 minutes and whilst parked on the taxi rank reading, suddenly one of the rear doors gets yanked open. A rucksack thrown in, a guy dives in head first shouting, "Get this car to the boat as fast as she'll go." I burst out laughing. I'd never expected anything like that to happen in real life. Anyway, being familiar with the ferry times, I knew we had plenty of time. It was only a 2-mile journey and the boat didn't sail for another 20 minutes, so no laws were broken getting him there. The guy was in too much of a hurry though. He threw me a £20 and didn't wait for his £18 change. I was on vacation in Germany at my uncle, and we were driving through the city. Me and my cousin were at the backseat, and he was driving. We stopped at traffic light and there was some random dude taking picture of every license plate of the cars, and my uncle is like, "Lock the doors." I lock my door and my cousin lock his side. After few seconds the guy tries to unlock one of the backseat doors. On the early 70s there were a number of park and ride establishments near Dallas's Love Field Airport. I drove my Ford Falcon Club wagon, a sort of early minivan, into one, since I was making a business trip. As I pulled up to drop my vehicle off, a young woman jumped into the passenger seat and said, "Quick, get me to the airport. It's almost time for my flight to leave." I replied, "Well, normally I'd be happy to, but my flight leaves pretty soon too." She was mortally embarrassed as she crawled back out to go and look for the real delivery van. I was the guy who jumped in the car. I was on a holiday in The Hague and drunkenly left a bar. It was a weekday, so I was looking for another place to party. I got to a place I'd been to years before. It's called Miller's, which is on a square called Kotermaat, I think. I forgot how to spell in Dutch. They pointed me away, and I end up hitching a ride on bicycles with these uni students to a place called Gabba, I think. It was a hole in the wall kinda bar. They didn't accept card, so I went down the street to get cash out. Right after, I realized I was so drunk that I forgot how to get back. Despite it being 20 meters away, I stopped to ask these group of Moroccan looking guys for directions. To note, it's a stereotype in the Netherlands that Moroccans are all involved in shady activities. Anyway, they said they didn't know where I was going, so I started walking off in the wrong direction. About 10 meters down the way, one of them ran up to me and said he knew where I needed to go. He then offered me a spliff, which drunk me said yes to, and we started walking. Alarm bells were going off in my head repeatedly, but the booths and weed kept pushing them out. After about 20 minutes of walking, I knew things were gonna end bad, and I kept trying to get the very few random bystanders to help me, but everyone on the street was wasted at that time or a tourist. Eventually it became fight or flight for me, and when I saw a cab driving down the street, I literally jumped in front of it waving my arms. Driver already had a passenger in it, but opened the window and asked what I wanted. My eyes red like a demon's while I hissed, "Man, you've gotta help me, man. This guy, I don't know him, man. I don't know where he wants to take me, man." I need to get back to my hotel, man. I'm staying at the Novotel on the high street, man. Please man, help me, man. The driver took one look at the passenger and went get in. The dude I was walking with just booked it down the street and the cab driver took me home. My fare was like 10 euros, but I gave him 50 euros cause he may just have saved my life.